Viewers like you make this program possible. Support your local PBS station.
Good morning, sir. Well, they got you up early this
Yes,
morning.
sir. All right, call Powell's secretary and see if we don't have a response. Okay. All right, I'll talk to you. Bernard, how you been? Okay.
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
This is yesterday's paper. It's all about the election. I'm
Yes.
tired of reading about that. My father was a hardworking man. He was a mail carrier. And my father would have been very content had I finished high school, married a nice girl, got a job in the post office. For him, that would have been a good thing. And my mother's attitude, that's not good enough for this boy. He's gonna do things and he's gonna go places. And I believed her.
Our guest today on Meet the Press is Vernon E. Jordan, Jr., president of the National Urban League. Mr. Jordan has been active in civil rights work, including the NAACP and the Voters Education Project, for 21 years. He survived an assassin's bullet in Fort Wayne, Indiana, last year. He has announced his resignation from the Urban League, effective the end of this month, to go into private law practice. It's obvious today that the civil rights movement is meeting some kind of resistance, or in some way perhaps has ended. Is it the same as it used to be? Is the momentum gone? Has the civil rights movement ended?
Well, I think that too many people want to measure the civil rights movement by the drama of the 1960s. What has happened is that drama has changed, and that drama brought about many, many significant changes. The Civil Rights Act of 64,
I
the Voter Rights
see
Act.
Vernon Jordan a little differently than traditional civil rights leaders. He understood that you can work to help people on the ground, but that work is always going to be operating under an umbrella of public policy. You can't help people without changing the public policies that create the circumstances in which they live.
We have no full employment policy. We have no welfare reform policy. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, never have so many expected so much and received so little.
When I met Hillary in 1971, first thing she did was tell me about Vernon Jordan. I had to listen to how handsome and brilliant and good he was. You know, it was revolting. He wanted to make his contribution, be part of the movement, but have a unique life. He had advisor to presidents, not just me.
Vernon Jordan was the first person to realize that a devastatingly effective form of Black power would be top-down integration at the heart of American capitalism, Wall Street. Vernon Jordan has done more to integrate the corridors of financial power than any African American in history. Vernon Jordan is the Rosa Parks of Wall Street.
Shanty, rocking to the same rhythm in our old rocking chairs. Speech maker has a big responsibility. His highest aspiration. He has to be sufficiently entertaining that people will listen. But then he has to say something
that makes listening worthwhile. Back in the back of his mouth. Sometimes I sit here trying to figure out what to say, and I look at my mom, and I say, what do you think about this?
Nearly 180,000 illegal immigrants with criminal records, ordered deported from our country, are tonight roaming free to threaten peaceful citizens.
We're waiting on you right now. But everyone sent me to give you the message.
So do we have everybody? Should Elle be right with us in the back?
Are you gonna drive separate?
Can't you fit three and, you put three in Vernon? You're gonna go.
All right, no,
Too many boxes.
You're crazy, right?
I got the phrase, make it plain in church. He said, make it plain, preacher. Put it there where we can get it. Good morning, Rankin Chapel. Good morning. During these times, it is tempting to believe that our problems are particular and that our situation is unprecedented. I've come to say to you this morning, we have been here before. I am reminded of my earliest exposure to American politics. Growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1943, there was a gubernatorial race. And Governor Eugene Talmadge comes on WSB radio and he says, fellow Georgians, I am running for re-election. I have 2 planks in my platform, niggers and roads. I'm against the first and for the second. This is exactly what President Trump is saying now. Except his 2 planks are immigrants and jobs. He's against the first and claims to be for the second. So when the executive orders bar people from our shores based on what they look like or how they worship, it is hard not to hear the echoes of Strom Thurmond on the campaign trail in 1948, or George Wallace in the schoolhouse door in 1963 saying, segregation today, tomorrow, forever, we have been here before. Indeed, because we have been here before, we know we will endure. But our journey also teaches us that endurance is not enough. Listen, we do not sing, we shall endure. We sing, we shall overcome.
A member of the Fulton County Commission made a speech recently and was quoted in the Atlanta Constitution as saying that we have to have annexation so as to prevent the center city from being governed by, quote, the uneducated and the unfit. Now, if that is the basis for annexation, I'm opposed to it.
because the uneducated and the unfit that he's talking about is me, is Maynard, is Leroy, or others of us in the black community who not only are educated, but are well-educated and certainly are well-fit to do anything in this community that any white man can do in this community. Thank you.
Whenever I come to Atlanta, I come by and say hello to my mother, and now I get to say hello to my mother and my brother. I am proud of having grown up in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in the first public housing project for black people in America. My father, very committed to going to work, getting there on time, and then working later that night as a bartender in my mother's catering business. Work was a big value in the Jordan family. I can't remember after I was 12 years old not having a job somewhere. I was a head dishwasher when I was 15 years old at Emory University because I was the only one working in the dish room who could read. You only came in contact with white people when you got on the bus and they sat up front and you sat in the back. I remember catching the streetcar and my mother would say, just because you have to sit back here and they have to sit up there does not mean that they are better than you. You are as good as anybody on this streetcar. This whole experience convinced me that if I got educated, I could do something about it. I'd like $1 for the times that I walked through this campus. When I went to a piano lesson, I came right through here. When I went to the Ashby Street Theater, I walked right through here. Because I lived straight that way.
This was your neighborhood.
Yeah. And one time, Benjamin Mays is leaving his house, walking through the campus, and I'm 20 feet behind him, and he's walking like this, so I walked like that. It's the absolute truth. All of the presidents in the Atlanta University Center were people to whom I looked up as a kid. President Mays at Morehouse, President Rufus Clement at Atlanta University, President Brawley at Clark College. The proximity had a big influence on me and what I wanted to be. Every Sunday morning, I looked forward to walking to St. Paul AME Church with my father and my brothers. Whenever I'm home in Atlanta on a Sunday, I come to St. Paul, because this is home. Now, right back here is a pew named for my mother. And I went to Europe the first time, and I was in, I forget where I was, but I bought a fan, you know, and gave it to her. And so she would come and sit on our pew, and the other sister would say, Sister Joan, where'd you get that fan? She says, Vernon brought it from Europe. She loved it. She was an unlearned, unlettered black woman from the South with a PhD in life. I started elementary school at Walker Street School in the first grade. After the first month, my mother was president of the PTA. She then became president of the state PTA for colored children. I could have gone to Howard, I could have gone to Morehouse, but I had been to DePaul right after I graduated high school. I knew that I was going to be the only black in my class. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be in another challenging, boring, almost setting. My mother wrote me a note. Dear man, she called me man. And she called me man because young white men would call my father boy. And she wanted me to know that I was a man. She said, dear man, we want you to go to college wherever you want to go to college. But it may be a better thing for you to go to Howard. You'll be with your own people, and you might be more suited academically. So I come home, I read my note. I say, hey, Mama, I'm going to DePaul. She said, all right, then we'll take you.
Beautiful.
Big tail. Yeah, I want to try to have no control. Can I get a picture with you at some point, Mr. Oh, yeah, Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, I got it. Step right in there.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I love this place, DePaul. While I learned a lot here, I also taught a lot just by the very fact of my presence. That's in part because I was the only black student in my class, one of only 5 enrolled at DePaul at the time. My roommates were 2 white Midwesterners. They were seniors and best friends and planned to room together their senior year. But when they showed up at 106 Longden Hall, I was already there for freshman orientation week. When they walked into that room and saw me sitting there, the look on their faces said it all. What have we gotten ourselves into now? They were not hostile or impolite. We coexisted for 3 weeks. Then one night, I came in from the library, and they were in the room in deep conversation. I spoke to them, and one said, we've been talking about you. And I said, and what have you concluded? And they said almost in unison, we have concluded that you are no different than we are. You go to sleep at your desk, you snore, you sing in the shower, you get mail and you get cookies and cakes from home, you play basketball and you drink beer and whiskey. For 3 years, I was a head waiter at Longden Hall. And when Richard Nixon came in 1956, I was given the honor of serving the head table. That photograph of me with the pitch in my hand, just over Richard Nixon, was a photograph that years later, President Nixon invited me to the Oval Office. And my gift to him was to show him that photograph, which he loved. And he loved it because he said, Vernon, I was a waiter in college too. He signed the picture, and I said, Mr. President, what you need to understand about this photograph is that it was taken when both of us were on our way up.
I went to law school out of some sense of mission. I went to the Howard Law School in particular because of its national reputation in civil rights, because of its Professor Jim Nabert, who initiated the first, who's now president of the university, who initiated the first course in civil rights, and who taught me constitutional law, which was one of the great privileges of my life.
I get to Howard, I'm a freshman, and there's a lecture by Thurgood Marshall. And I cannot tell you what it felt like to walk into the moot court room and hear Thurgood Marshall talk. I knew that I was in the right place.
Howard University School of Law, it was a place where the most successful litigation strategy in American legal history was put together. NAACP Legal Defense Fund with Thurgood Marshall had come through and begun to have a series of victories that led up to Brown. In the immediate post-Brown period, Vernon Jordan is going to law school, learning how to take these victories that were more than just case studies, but actually a roadmap for future victories in other places.
All of their dry runs were in the Howard University moot courtroom. And as students, we would, during the breaks, stand 4 feet away so we could hear what they were talking about as they assessed the arguments. And my ultimate experience as a young lawyer, Wiley Branton, who was a lawyer for the Little Rock Nine, moved my admission to the U.S. Supreme Court. And when I took my hand down after being sworn in, I looked directly at Thurgood Marshall. And Thurgood Marshall, from the bench of the Supreme Court, winked his eye at me. My mother said that was a laying on of hands.
Came home out of some sense of mission, feeling that if I come back south, I could do something about the problem.
I began my law career working for Donald L. Hollowell, who was then the prominent civil rights lawyer in Atlanta, for $35 a week. And I didn't go to the office my first day. I went straight to the Atlanta Municipal Court to get students from the Atlanta University Center out of jail.
Hollowell went where angels feared to tread. You know, you look back over it now, but I mean, you're going into a place where people have been hung by the Ku Klux Klan and their houses have been burned. It was dangerous.
You have asked me what other plans do we have in connection with Reverend Martin Luther King's release. Of course, this would depend upon whether or not the court granted our motion to...
The first case that I was involved in with Don Hollowell was 8 weeks after law school. I was with Nathaniel Johnson the night before he went to the electric chair because there were no black lawyers in Augusta, Georgia in 1959.
When was the first time I ever saw Vernon Jordan? I saw Vernon Jordan on a black and white TV set when I was 11 years old. There was a tall, handsome black man walking next to a young black co-ed. He was escorting her through this wall of hostility.
I didn't get involved in civil rights until my senior year in high school. They came to our school and asked our principal that did they have any top students who could apply to the local white college. Hamilton Holmes was the first in our class. He wanted to be a doctor. I looked at the curriculum. I wanted to be a journalist. And that was the beginning of our journey, not necessarily to be pioneers, but to realize our dreams. We had won, and we were going to claim our victory. It was my mother, Vernon, and me, and of course we were surrounded by all the reporters and students yelling ugly racial epithets. Vernon was very serious and very determined, so I didn't pay much attention to him when we first met. He was focused. He was focused on his mission.
He understood that there were television cameras there to record it. And what we know, broadcasting images around the country on the nightly news tells a story that is difficult to ignore. I'm here, I have agency, I have humanity, and I have dignity. And you all are going to have to deal with that because I'm not going anywhere.
We were focused. I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to get this job done. All of the rest of that just faded away. To go forth, go forward, and get the job done.
In 1961, the NAACP offered me a job as the Georgia field director. I was organizing, and I was rehabilitating branches that had gone down. My first year, my membership results were the best in the South. I had the same job in Georgia that Medgar had in Mississippi. But he was older than me. He had been doing the job much longer. Medgar and I became very good friends.
Why do you feel that it is important for Negroes to vote?
For example, here in Jackson, there is not one single Negro policeman. There are some 60,000 Negroes who live in Jackson, Mississippi, with no Negroes represented on the police force.
Very charismatic and totally unafraid.
I've had a number of threatening calls, people calling me saying that they were going to kill me, saying that they were going to blow my home up, and saying that I only had a few hours to live. Actively getting Negroes.
That spring, I called him up and I said, Medgar, I'm leaving. I'm going to work for the Southern Regional Council. He said, Vernon, that's what you should do. But I can't leave. And then he was assassinated.
NAACP official Medgar Evers was shot and killed by a sniper. Evers, a 37-year-old father of three and a veteran, was buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
Medgar knew what was in store and left us too early. In 1970, I was offered the job as executive director of the United Negro College Fund, which meant I had to leave Atlanta and move to New York.
Achievement, success, record, making a real difference in the life of this nation is the story of the colleges within the United Negro College Fund.
When I got to New York, my most enthusiastic and committed mentor was Whitney M. Young. Whitney has never gotten his just due. He revitalized the Urban League.
My only plea is that if we must polarize in this country, then let us no longer polarize on the basis of race or religion or economic status, but let us polarize on the basis of decent people versus indecent people. Between people... The black power structure of New York didn't like it. That Whitney came from Atlanta to take over the Urban League, and they were not consulted. And then this kid comes from Atlanta to take over the college fund and raise more money than had ever been raised.
The United Negro College Fund has helped black students get an education, but today there just isn't enough money. And tomorrow...
We're sorry, but this course has been canceled.
Please don't let this happen. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
A year after I got to New York to run the college fund, Whitney Young died. And I was asked to be his successor.
No man can enter lightly upon the task of carrying the mission to which Whitney Young brought such unique wisdom, effectiveness, and grace. I accept, not because of the honor of succeeding a great man, but out of a deep sense of duty and responsibility to use whatever talents and abilities I have to help black people in America achieve their rightful and just place in this society. My approach would be my approach, and however that may be interpreted in terms of whether it's moderate or radical or conservative, that's not for me to judge. It is for the Urban League Board, the Urban League constituency, and black people and white people generally to judge what kind of leadership that will be.
The National Urban League is a civil rights organization, and over time, it added to its advocacy to be involved in lobbying on public policy changes.
I was the first non-social worker who headed up the Urban League. I thought like I was trained like a lawyer.
When I arrived at the Urban League, Martin Luther King Jr. had been dead for 3 years. The NAACP had lost some of its clout, taking a back seat to the strident tone of the Black Power movement. There was the notion that there had to be a leader of the black community. What single individual would step up and take the mantle of Martin Luther King Jr.? This was very much in the mindset of the times.
Can black people survive culturally and physically in America? Can we ever be a part of the existing white institutions, or should we be developing our own? Can we as a people develop solutions to our dilemma fast enough to counteract the present rate of growth of the oppressive factors built into this society by institutional white racism? As black people, we must deal with the issue. Is it too late? Tonight on Black Journal, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Imamu Amidi Baraka, Reverend Albert Clegg, Mr. Roy Ennis, Mr. Vernon Jordan.
Most of the panel is integrationist, which is outmoded and obsolete and will tend to destroy black people. Black people have got to drive integration organizations, the black church and its integration thing. We have got to drive them out of the black community. We can't put together a program that's dependent on dealing with black integration. They are the enemy.
Mr. Jordan, you were trying to make a point, and then Mr. Gregg.
I think the Reverend Clegg ought to understand that those of us who do take a position of an open, pluralistic society, that we're not going out of the black community, that we're not going to be run out.
and that we're there just like the tree planted by the rivers of water.
We have one more response.
I'm wondering whether, Mr. Jordan and the other assimilationists and integrationists would be willing to refrain from speaking exclusively for the black community, recognize their two goals, and agree for us to function and possibly have a peaceful coexistence and reinforce each other's goal. The problem is the integrationists in conspiracy to silence the true aspiration and goal of most black people, which is that of self-determination.
Is there a common ground, then, that anyone can agree upon for the advancement of all blacks?
Yeah, to get some power. Either we escape from powerlessness and get power to control our own destiny, or we end up the victims of genocide.
I think that there would be a consensus here, if that's possible, that the goal of political and economic empowerment on the part of black people is a desirable goal and hopefully an achievable one. I think that the difference comes as we relate to how we get there and the means by which it ought to be achieved. Black people have to say...
Whitney Young and Vernon Jordan were very different people. Vernon Jordan took the baton and moved the Urban League into new spaces in terms of lobbying, in particular, interacting with corporate America and sitting on corporate boards.
Do you know how hard it was for him to be the first Negro to be seated at those boards, surrounded by people primarily with Ivy League educations who didn't grow up knowing any black people?
He wanted to know how America worked and how people that he thought were otherwise decent people could be supporting politics and policies that he deeply disagreed with, and whether there was some way to bridge the divide. And he always tried to find some way to do that.
He has an almost unique position because people talk to him because he's smart, but they talk to him even more because he's wise. If I ask Vernon for a piece of advice, I'm going to get something that's meaningful.
Vernon is a true role model for all of us. I think if you're lucky enough to have Vernon on your board, he does talk to you about how you promote young executives of color. And he's also been the voice of reason or conscience for presidents.
Presidential wall, and every president since Lyndon Johnson is here. Here I am with Johnson, President Nixon, right after I succeeded Whitney Young as the head of the Urban League. Well, we got along all right. I said to him, you say something I don't like, I will tell you publicly. And that was our deal. Gerald Ford, President Reagan, Bill Clinton, and here I am with my fellow Georgian, Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter of Georgia came to Urban League meetings proudly wearing our equality pin in his lapel. In the short time he has been president, the sad fact is that the list of what the administration has not done far exceeds its list of accomplishments. Black people didn't vote for Nixon and black people didn't vote for Ford. They voted for Jimmy Carter, and it is not enough for President Carter to be just a little bit better than his predecessors.
Jumped on him in 1977 when I keynoted the Urban League. And he said to me, you could have told me that in the Oval. And I said, if you think that, you don't understand your job or mine. He understood, I think, ultimately my role as an advocate for black people.
Black people in the whole process of desegregation and integration are always the ones that have to give up something. And I think that black people generally across this country, especially in the urban cities, are a little weary of having to give up for the comforts of the majority. True answer, it seems to me.
I went with him on several speaking engagements.
In each of those cities, he made very strong arguments about economic equality.
The lesson here, my friends, is that members of the white business power structure are bad politicians. They fail to understand that blacks will no longer be junior partners in the old alliance.
And he was strong, and his voice was strong, and he was powerful, and he was delivering it. I mean, he was bringing it.
What you have to understand, Mr. Hyde, is you see, I do not trust white people in the South with my rights.
But I said to him, I said, Dad, you know, do you ever get worried about saying stuff like this to these white people? And he said, no, you gotta say it. You gotta tell it. And I said, wow, I mean, it's just, you know, don't you worry somebody's gonna try to hurt you? 2 weeks later,
I did not know what had happened. I did not know why it happened. When I was on the ground bleeding, I was saying, I have to be in Houston tomorrow. I did not know that I was not going to Houston until I woke up after the operation.
we got to the hospital. He just had so many tubes and wires all around him, but they let us go up and, you know, touch his hand, and I stroked his head and told him I was there.
I did not know what my future was. And when I was in the hospital for 98 days, I was only thinking about one thing. What do I have to do to get out of here?
In 1980, when I lost in the Reagan landslide, it was a tough year for me and Hillary, and a much tougher year for Vernon. That's when he was shot. Sometime in early 1981, he called Hillary and he said, "You got any grits down there?" And she said, "What do you mean? You mean New York or Washington?" She said, "No, in Arkansas. You got any grits?" He says, I need some. She said, "Well, when do you want them?" He said, "How's tomorrow morning?" He flew all the way to Arkansas because I was the youngest ex-governor in decades in American history, and he didn't want me to give up. It was like the life for me ain't been no crystal stairs, like the old Langston Hughes poem. You know, he said it's just a splinter on the stair, but he said, you know, you got to keep climbing the stairs.
We're here at Aiken, Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld, where I have been a senior partner since January of 1982.
The way I think about it is Vernon was one of the first crossover artists. At that time, someone moving from a civil rights organization to a corporate law firm, that was a first.
A lot of people thought your decision to leave the Urban League now was deserting an important cause just when it needed your type of leadership the most. What do you say to those who think you're abandoning a vital cause when you've served all your adult life in order to go make money?
Well, go and make money, that's your own view of it. I believe that 10 years is long enough in this particular capacity. I do not believe that there is ever a good time to leave, nor do I believe that any one individual is absolutely indispensable to progress. So I do not view my resignation as abandonment. I view it as a refreshing interlude for an institution to get new leadership, fresh leadership. I also view it as a professional and personal opportunity for myself to pursue a course of of work that is exciting, that is intellectually challenging, and that will be rewarding to me.
We are all looking this way for the revolution, and Vernon is over here in corporate America making the revolution.
I believe his movement to a corporate law firm brought the civil rights movement to the next level.
One of the factors that I took into account when I interviewed with firms was whether there was an African American in the firm that was of note. Because I thought, just like many people before me, that I would stand on the shoulders of that other already successful individual. And this firm had Vernon. If you think about what the movement was about, equality, equal opportunity, I look at Vernon and I think, boy, that's what we want to achieve.
I've been coming since 1982, and I'm almost 83 years old. I like it. It's very simple. The thought of retirement does not excite me.
Yeah, I wish he'd slow down a little bit, actually. I think his schedule and his desire to keep at it every day fuels him.
Diplomatic role here. Now this street right here to the left, at the end of that street on the right-hand side is where the Clintons have a house. Now this house right here, that's where Kellyanne Conway lived.
Did she come say hi to you?
Well, I welcomed her to the neighborhood and said hello and all that. Sometimes I'm sitting down here at the fire, and I think, this is a long way from University Homes, the housing project where I grew up. A long way.
Vernon joined Lazard in January of 2000. Was really fortunate because when Vernon arrived, the office that he took was literally next to mine, and I had the great fortune of just being close to him whenever he was here, which was 4 days a week. He kind of adopted me, and he became a real friend, obviously, but also, very importantly, a mentor to me over that whole period of time.
There he is. Thank you. This is what it's all about here.
My assistant will say, Vernon is coming up to see you. Well, I know that will mean 15 minutes from now because Vernon will stop and engage with everybody. Vernon knows something about almost everybody that he passes in the halls, and he has a word or two to say to everybody.
The Washington Post has that too.
I would not be sitting in the chair as chair of this law firm if it was not for Vernon Jordan. I mean, I have zero doubt that his mentorship is how I got here. In 1981, there were 23,000 of us at the Philadelphia Civic Center, and he was my commencement speaker when I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. And fast forward 15 years later, I joined Aiken Gump and attended my first partner retreat and saw him across the room and walked straight across and said, Mr. Jordan, you will not remember me from the 23,000 people at the Philadelphia Civic Center, but I remember every word you said. And Vernon, being Vernon, said, young lady, I don't know who you are. I don't know what your name is, but you are my new best friend. And it was true. He shepherded me through that meeting, introduced me to everyone of importance at the firm, and here we are.
I very proudly hold myself out as a mentee of Vernon Jordan. In 1984, Vernon was on the board of directors at American Express, and evidently my name came up at the board meeting as someone who had very high potential. And so Vernon called me and said, "Ken, this is Vernon Jordan." And he asked me if I would come to breakfast. And the breakfast, it lasted for 5 hours. And he talked to me about my aspirations, but he also told me his story, and it was wonderful. And certainly my journey in the corporate world, I encountered prejudice and I encountered skepticism, whether I belonged. But I think the mentality that I had was very much a mentality that I had a right to be there, and I was going to push forward and deal with obstacles because of leaders like Vernon Jordan, who had demonstrated throughout their life that obstacles were to be overcome.
The feeling is I had a lot of help, and so I'm here to help others if I can.
I never saw him turn down an opportunity to try to help a young person who needed help, including to give good advice. So there are, quite apart from all these jobs he's held and all these board positions he's held and all these things he's done, and the fact that he was very close to me, so close that he turned down my plea with him to become Attorney General. I said, "Vernon, you could become the first black Attorney General." He said, "Yeah." He said, "And I know exactly what the job is." And he said, what's going to happen when you need somebody to just talk to you?" He said, I don't want to be in the government. I want to be your friend."
When I testified in the impeachment trial of Bill Clinton, my testimony was not put in the record because the Republicans kept it out. And here is my testimony that I have framed. What was taught to me by my mother is that the only thing that I own totally and completely is my integrity. And my integrity has been on trial here. The president is my friend. He was before this happened, he is now, and he will be when this is over.
He's a fast friend. He doesn't quit on people that he loves, even if they fail.
Put the syrup in the fridge.
Just put it there.
Okay.
Well, what do you got to tell me? Do you have a telephone number for the Paris ambassador? Yeah, where I had dinner the other night. I've been here 20 years. I don't own it, I rent it. I think you only own one house. And if the pipes burst in January, it's not my problem. That's right, it's not my problem. I know that I have been blessed with extraordinary mentors in my career. How are you?
I'm good.
I am also very certain that there is no substitute for a commitment to excellence, hard work, and sacrifice. I'm pretty sure that that is in part the explanation for whatever I may have achieved, but I didn't get here by myself.